You're now listening to the Palmetto Dugout Show, hosted by State Director Sammy Esposito, Associate Scouts Drew Stewart and Sean Smith, that discuss all things related to amateur baseball in South Carolina. Here are your hosts.
Welcome to episode 60 of the Palmetto Dugout Show. I'm Drew Stewart here with Sammy Esposito, Austin Smith, and Sean Duncan. What's going on, guys?
Coach, what's happening? We doing all right today?
Doing good. Big episode here for episode 60. But first, make sure you like and subscribe down below. And with that, I'm going to flip it over to Espo here to kind of introduce who we have on the show.
Yeah, big guest today on the show, right? Sean Duncan. For all you great listeners out there, watchers that don't know, owner president of Prep Baseball. So we're glad to have him on the show today. Kind of break down a little bit of Prep Baseball, where it's been, where we're at, and where we're going, and kind of talk a little baseball. And we'll kind of leave off some of the talk we had before we got on here live show. Going on with that one, even though the people might really want to hear what that's about. But Sean, welcome to the show today. We're glad to have you on here.
Well, thanks so much. I'm flattered to be on, and you guys. I mean, I've been a long-time listener of your podcast. It's taken 59 episodes to get to finally get to the pinnacle of on your show. So, thanks so much. I know where I stack up on your pecking order there in the great Palmetto State. So, but thanks a lot. I'm happy to be here.
We had to make sure we had a few under our belt before we bring the big cheese on here. We don't want to go episode 1 where we're bumbling and stumbling. We bumbled some a little less on this one, but we're still rolling on that one. So fired up to have you on. I know obviously a lot of transition going on right now with the company, as you can see. The hat you got going on, the new logo, a lot of new things. Let's kind of break this thing down, right? 20 plus years ago when you got this thing cranking up, how did you get the thing going? What was your thought of where you were at there and what you were wanting to accomplish with all this?
Yeah, a lot of people have asked, like, hey, did you ever imagine, where it would be or whatever? When you start anything in life, you never think more past the next day, right? So, I mean, when we started it was just in Illinois as a print magazine. And our mission was just to know every player in the state, from top to bottom, not just the top 10, top 20, high draft, SEC, ACC, Big Ten type of guys, because that's Big Ten country where I started in Chicago. And, just every player mattered type of thing, but it was all unpacked into a magazine. So when we started it, it was just, let's just see if we can make it to the next month. And then, fortunately, we had some colleges subscribe, and then we ran a couple events. So like, okay, we made it to the next month and the next month. And then, then we hire a couple people, and then you're just like, okay, can we pay them? Can we make payroll? So, because it's like, it's always been a white knuckle ride anytime you start something new. In my, I never like to ever put the cart before the horse. It's always just kind of win the day, win the week, win the month. So I don't think we've won anything, to be clear, but, we have survived and advanced for quite some time. And, I think the key to our growth has been like getting people like you, Sammy, and I'm not just saying it because you're the podcast host here, but like, credibility is king, right? In my opinion. And our secret sauce is our people, and having really good, highly credible people at the state levels is really where I think we really have flourished and succeeded. I mean, Sammy, I've been knowing you for a long time. You were at Wichita State, Houston, and everywhere I'd go, you were moving 3 times faster than me, right? So you always kind of, we're all recruiters by heart, right? So you always make mental notes on, whose motor is good, because that's 80% of the battle. High motor, good motor, and if you look around our ecosystem at every state, in our states, there's not a lot of low motor people around here anymore. Because I think our company culture is like real recognizes real, and so that's been kind of our exponential growth is largely due to the better people we have brought in to help grow this thing. And Sammy, I mean, to have someone who was at South Carolina for, I don't know, how long were you at South Carolina for? 8 years, couple World
10
Series.
years.
Yeah, 10 years, and you've been there, done that. And, you want to surround yourself with everybody who's been there, done that more than you and knows the territory, the state or the region territory like the back of their hand. And so where the players are, where the players aren't, who's how to deal and navigate the unique situations that every state presents, right? Like, and every state is uniquely different in the coaches associations, the travel team, legion in some territories. So every state is uniquely different. And so my approach has never been to cookie cutter a state, like us dictating how it happens from like our headquarters in Chicago, right, would be foolish, right? Like you tell me how we need to execute the state. And then, we've had a couple decades worth of experience of just throwing poop against the wall and seeing what sticks and what doesn't, right? So we have a fairly good idea of those types of things, but and then from there, we've done a lot in the last 18 to 24 months, and kind of really building out the technological infrastructures, and really amenitizing our states with tech, which is probably a big pain in the butt for you to execute it at the state level. And I'm sending you a big mental hug right now, because not everything is smooth sailing, right? And so, but the hard part about it is the back office behind it, right? Like ingesting the data, cleaning the data, and disseminating it to our clients. Our website is probably our biggest client. So it's been that's probably a way longer winded answer of what you asked me, but I'll shut up now. So
well, you hit on that, right? I know when I was recruiting, right, we would always use, you'd hop on, Prep Baseball Report when I was at Wichita State or I was at Houston. When I was left South Carolina, it was just cranking up here in the state. But we'd always use it, and you can always pick up the phone and call that state director. And I think that's one thing. And I mean, I tell people this all the time when they ask me my opinion. I go, not because I work for the company, but I used to use the company as a coach. And I think that's important. You can pick up the phone call and call an individual. Heck, I saw a banter back and forth on Twitter the other night about rankings, right? And we all understand what rankings are and what they aren't and all that stuff. But right, we're one of the few things out there that there's a name next to it, right? You see the ranking list and there's a name next to it. Sometimes you want to hide your name, but there's always a name.
Sure.
So I do, like you said, you talked about the state and that where it's at, and there's a person, there's a name, and I've heard that from coaches, from travel coaches, from high school coaches, from college coaches, to where they know who that person is they need to get a hold of. Right, wrong, or different doesn't matter.
Yeah, and to that, and I mentioned it before, is like credibility, right? Like who's putting together those lists? Are you in the trenches? Do you know, like at the state level? And and that's going back to you and all of it. All the guys in our system. Like I always tell our guys, like rankings are subjective, right? Like there's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's not necessarily a right or a wrong, but there's definitely a good and a bad, right? Like you could argue this guy's 1 or 5 or 5 and 10, but like people in the state know like when something sucks, right? Like so that's why I just think that it's so important to have like the right people running at the state and regional levels. And and the people to your north, you know, um, we just have a lot of really good people in our staff, and I'm really proud of kind of the culture we have in our organization.
No doubt, no doubt. Obviously, growing and continue to grow and kind of where we're going, but also something brand new just kind of broke out not too long ago that's been working on in the All American game. Kind of touch base on that. Obviously, we a couple invites from the state of South Carolina were out there. One wound up couldn't make it late, but the other one was. But just kind of touch on how that was on your, obviously probably working on this on the back end for a long time, but able to go off in a big league park with
Yeah,
right tons and tons of gear and taking care of the guys. But obviously, it's a very important piece for not only us but the players.
yeah. Um, we always knew, like, I mean, we run all types of stratified levels of events, right? But we never had an All-American game. In my mind, I just didn't want to run something out that was kind of hackneyed, like it's been done. So, just best ideas are just when you're spitballing with people is like, hey, let's do let's get the best seniors playing the best juniors. There's no difference in talent at that level, right? So let's give this year's draft class versus next year's draft class, and let's put a spin on it. We didn't want to, we changed kind of the time frame on it. We're turning the page, and it's in September, where it's kind of like the first, a fresher look on some of these guys. And we wanted to do it big, like really big, if we are going to do it. And super grateful for our baseball partner Mizuno, who really kind of backed up the truck on this thing and emptied it out. I mean, the amount of stuff these kids got, the amount of gear and the mitts. They even flew in their mitt masters from Japan to break in these mitts for the kids. I mean that's in the States. People don't think about that. Like, oh, you could do that. You could throw a mitt in a steamer at Dick's and do it, but like it's like an art form in Japan, right? I mean, one of the guys like has never been to the States before, and yeah, and and you watching these guys work, so it's truly an art form. So like we really try to think of all the details, the micro details, and pimp it out as big as possible, so these kids do feel like big leaguers and have an interesting mix of coaches that can impart, not like, no one's changing arm actions or swing pass or anything like that, but it's like, hey, Matt Holliday, you're a borderline Hall of Fame guy, or you should be in the Hall of Fame. Like, what do you know? Like, help these kids think about stuff, because they are going to traverse this professional pathway at some point or another, like in different guys with different career arcs. So I was super pleased and proud of how it all kind of came together. And so, but it was a great experience for the players, and it was a great experience for our staff who was there. And so it was really cool.
Yeah, obviously the gear, right? Most 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, right? That gear, heck, 44-year-olds like myself. But right, you sit there, you get the gear, right? You saw the pictures, you saw some of the stuff. Skylar Hegler was there from South Carolina, sent some stuff that he was getting, and right, it's phenomenal. Take care of those kids, and right, those they now that's what they know. They think it's become this is a great event, right? You get taken care of, and heck, from the day they got there, right? All it was them. They were part of it. It was like a team. It was like they were the big league team up there, being bussed around. Everything was together. The meals, but everything they did, right? The game rooms, the players' lounge. It was all, heck, like you said, first class for those guys. And now especially kids that aren't maybe we're from a newer area of a little bit of PBR. To these guys now are like, wow, there's nothing better. So it's I know for us when we have something like that here in South Carolina, it really allows us to elevate the game a little bit more, because it's something that in the past these kids haven't had an opportunity to be around, and now it's that they go that's really cool. That's something I want to get to and work towards, and that's for us, which has been big, and we talk about it all the time, the junior futures game, right? Obviously, these new recruiting rules that are coming out might affect some of these things, but the junior futures, getting some of those kids, those younger guys to that event,
Yeah.
which is by far, if you're an uncommitted kid, is by far the greatest event in the world. Not just because I work here again, but because of what it is, right? The futures game and the junior futures, it is phenomenal. And those kids walk around, and the parents, they go, "This is hands down the best." And I remember coaching and going, "What is this future games thing that's going out there? We need to start getting to that thing." And you get up there and you go, "There's a lot of good players up here." How did that kind of come about for you guys? Back in the day?
So I think the future games in its 10th or 11th or 12th year, I can't remember. It was 2011, I think, was the first year at a small Division III, and there was only 4 states back in the day. But it was like back in the day, you probably remember, like, area code tryouts was like the big summer thing, right? Like, and at least in the Midwest, it was huge. And it was like I would go there as a scout and be like, 85 to 90% of these kids are committed. Like, so what the hell? Like, why is everyone showing up for this? So it was just like, we need to create an event where every single player is uncommitted. And what would happen if that happens? And make it state specific. Let's play to our strength of knowing the state, because there's a lot of guys that are the famous guys, right? Like, everyone's on them. But as scouts, good scouts, like, hey, this kid's going to pop in a big way, right? Like, with 10 extra pounds, like, the arm is clean, and, the athletics delivery, like, this kid's going to jump like that. And so, like, let's get it state specific. Let's get it like, hey, if Jimmy Jones commits a week before the event, sorry, dude, you're out. And, and make it like, where it's like next to free, and, like, to get there. But once you're there, like, you will be blown away. And we were fortunate to get, some really, really good players at the first couple events at the states that we had. And all the colleges were like, holy crap, like, all these kids are uncommitted, and like first rounders in our first event, type of thing. Like Corey Ray was at our first event, and dudes like that. And so, word spread, and as we grew, so did the event. So did the size of the event. But like, it got to a point, and I know recruiting rules have changed, like, colleges were like hard pressing guys to commit like a day before to show up, because they knew, like, once they showed up there's going to be a lot more competition for that player. So there were a handful of schools that were super famous for doing that. So the evolution of that event was just the top uncommitted players. And obviously with the new recruiting rules, that amplifies that event even more, right? Like, so I think we had over 350 colleges there this year. And so, even on the junior side, I mean, colleges are going, like, the bigger schools, the bigger conferences are over fishing way more on the junior side than I would have ever thought in a million years. It's pretty scary, but I would do the same thing too if I were in their shoes. So, it's a good way to shoot a lot of fish in a barrel at one time. So
no doubt. I mean, we little old South Carolina finished fourth down there in the juniors this year. So we had a really talented roster. And like you said, we'd look up in the stands and you're kind of like, what are you guys doing over here? With these new rules, you see some of those coaches over there, and and they were like, you guys got good players, got to come see them. So it's been big. And like you said, right, with that new recruiting rule, the futures game just gonna, I don't know how much it can get, how it can keep getting bigger, but the importance of that with the timing, right? August 1 is the first time they can reach out to those guys. And, this past year it finished up right before that. So obviously it's a huge, and also with the new recruiting rules with that transfer portal, I talked to a handful of coaches down there. They were telling me, hey, this is my first or second high school only stuff that we've paid attention to in the summer. So
yeah,
now it's not only getting the final thing, it's getting the first big time look at some of these kids.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't even know how this thing's gonna go in the next couple of years for high school players, right? But for us, I just think it's so important that we advocate for the players, to get where they want to go, not make them up, right? Like we can't make the players up, right? But help players traverse this whole baseball universe. And because that's the lifeblood of our business, right? Is helping the people at the state level. And, listening to you talk about South Carolina, and I really, again, going back to you have pride in the state, and every single director has pride in their state, wants their state to do well, wants their players to move on, wants, them to achieve the most. I mean, for one, it's just, that's their state. Two, because we're all competitive species, right? We all want to win in anything we do. And three, it's great marketing. When people come to our events and they get recruited from our events directly and indirectly, I mean, that's what people come to events for, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff out there that doesn't happen, right? So so that to me is the reason why after close to 20 years, the lights are still on, because we help players.
Yeah. And that's the bigger, I mean, I've told a couple of parents before, I go, it's not that we want our kids in state to go out of state. We want to give the kids as many opportunities as they can, right? I mean, baseball forever has always been a regionally based recruiting, and that's fine. And it usually probably will continue to be that way. But if we can provide an opportunity to help the kid elsewhere, or maybe even better their financial situation where they're at, then it's better off for them. I mean, it's, they got 25% to South Carolina, they got 30 to Clemson, and Ole Miss comes in with 70%. Well, maybe we just bettered that kid's pocket by there and got them in a better situation where they can go, and it's all good. I mean,
But is
forever
that a specific use case right there, or are
no,
you,
no, it's no. I just threw that one out there. I just threw out some schools, but I figured maybe we'll keep a little bit of conditions around there. But right, forever, right? It's always been in-state going at it, right? And maybe that is the best fit for the kid. But maybe there was a better fit that the kid just couldn't get his name out to. And if we can help in the slightest bit to get that kid that opportunity, then the better it off is for them. And I think that's huge. I mean, we talked about the 350 plus coaches that were down, right? They're all in one pod. It's playing on one pod down there in Lake Point, right? So it's not hard for a coach to wander around over to the other field and go, who's that Drew Stewart kid over there throwing? Who's that Austin Smith thumbing it up there?
Right.
You can kind of figure that one out there when you go and open those up. So now, you touched a little bit. Where's it going to go? Who knows? What, the vision, right? Obviously, you touched on, and we, players have been to our events, right? You got the track man, we got all the cameras, we got the Swift laser gates, we're getting the jump back cranking back up again. here in South Carolina. We'll get that crank back up this weekend at our unsigned senior game. But, right, you get a lot of this tech. Like, what's the – without giving out too much scoop and dope out there, what's kind of the vision moving forward with a lot of this stuff to help evaluate better baseball players and help to test and athletically grade them out?
Yeah. We're always, burn a lot of brain cells kind of working through all the tech out there, from biomechanics and all, everything that's out there, right? Like, there's so much. And then, but there gets to a point of diminishing returns when it comes to tech. And, I'm not going to tip my hand on like what we have cooking out, but I just, like, what I've learned the hard way is, like, there's a certain capacity of which, like, people, like, the players and the parents, like, can utilize. Meaning, like, you just let's just go back to TrackMan, for example. We have a lot of people that used to work at TrackMan that work in our organization now, because, like, we spent a lot of money on TrackMan. And so if we're going to have all these expensive toys, we need to know how to use them and employ them. And not only that, but, like, let's create our own, like, data sets from it, like that, but, one of the, it took TrackMan like 12 plus years for people to really understand, like, because it's a player development tool initially, right? Like, hey, like, let's pair these two data sets, and this is, but people, it's a lot. Like, it's a lot for people to take in. And so you could, like, kind of fry the motherboard, if you will, on, people's motherboard, their own motherboards, on trying to, like how much is too much information, right? So, we've killed some tech rollouts that because no one cared, either because it's like they didn't want it, or it's just, we did some biomechanical stuff for a while, and, like, it's a lot for people, because, like, we do it for two different reasons, right? Like, you do it for colleges to recruit players, right? Like, here's more information that you could pair with the video, even if you're not at the event, because you still, you want them to see it with their own eyes, but, you can't be at 100 places at once. So that's one use case. But the other is, like, my whole thesis was, give the players the data. So, one, they can understand where they stack up, but two, and more importantly, they could use it to get better, right? Take it back to your pitching coach, take it back to your hitting coach, use it, benchmark it, work against it to get better. So there is a point of too much. I will say that, we want to continue to monetize our events in a thoughtful manner. But, there's just, like, what is easily digestible? That is, to me, is the secret sauce on any tech. How can the consumer easily digest this? If you think back, I know you're older, Drew and Austin, you guys look a little younger, but do you remember when, like, Spark rolled out?
Yeah.
Remember, like, when the Spark testing rolled out? Like, that was, and there was a ton of marketing behind it. And there was a ton, Nike was behind it, and, like, Area Code was using it. So we this was back in 2014, 13, 14, I think. And so we started doing it, but it's like, what does 30 mean? If your composite score is 30, what does that mean? No one knew. Like, is that good? Is that bad? That sounds bad. No, that's actually really good. Like, so it's like, right. What is that composite number? How is it digested? And how could you use that to evaluate player? And that's the same reason why people say, why do people run the 60? Right? Like, you don't run a straight line for 60 yards ever in baseball. Well, it's a benchmarkable number. So what we try to do is still keep that benchmarkable number. I don't even think benchmarkable is an actual word, but you know what I'm saying, right? So you keep that benchmark, but what's more applicable is the 10-30 split and the peak speed from start to 30, between 10 and 30. So then you could extrapolate that out to miles per hour, right? Like StatCast and all that stuff. And that actually can give you really good insights to a player's speed, not necessarily a straightaway 60 speed. But then again, look, you're an old school scout, Sammy. What do you look at first? Are you looking at the 60 number, or are you looking at their 10 to 30 peak speed number?
Yeah, the 60's nice. It's all fun and games, but if somebody's got a good 30, right, they get down the line good, and they just run out of gas a little bit more. It's a little bit more important.
Yeah.
Whether they're that home to first time, right? How fast did they get going down there? I mean, that's a more realistic,
right?
Number. Yeah, you run a, if I run a 6.8, does that mean I'm a worse base runner? That heck, one of the best base runners ever coached when he got to South Carolina, Jackie Bradley, was a 7.2 60 guy. You'd never know. Everybody thought he was a 6.6 plus.
Exactly.
But how he ran it was more important. Now he improved that.
What's so funny is the longer you're in this game and the longer you've been scouting, the more you appreciate like the 60 time, like the run time. The only thing that matters for a position player really is, can you hit?
Yeah.
Can you hit? And then you could start working backwards on everything else. So that's been my kind of Moby Dick, is how to figure out the guys other than, because we're all throwing thigh high, dead dick. Oh, strike that. Down the middle fastballs. Down the middle fastballs during BP, very barrel friendly fastballs, right? Or I wouldn't call them fastball, BP balls. And so that could give you bat speed, that could give you balance, that could give you a lot of other stuff. But how can we help evaluate hitting? Because, and then similarly on pitchers, velo is awesome, spin rates are awesome, but can you fill up the strike zone? Because 95 guys who don't throw strikes get dudes fired, right? And usually they don't make it out of the fall.
Right.
And
coach
so
killer.
So that's why we added, strike zone. If you dig into the TrackMan data that we have, the first thing that I look at is strike percentage, right? And if you could throw strikes and then the arm is clean and the arm works pretty fast and you have an athletic delivery, everyone's going to gain velocity, right? You think about when you started recruiting back in the day, 88 was a really big deal.
Right.
You're like, oh, this 14-year-old's throwing 88. You don't even freaking you're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah,
that's good.
It's we're all so desensitized by velocity, right? So now I just think about things so much differently now, having done this 20 plus years from an evaluator perspective, that I did. The second you start cookie cuttering scouting is the second you're gonna lose, right? So anyway, I don't know how I got on that track, but sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, but it's right. Right, you come to one of our deals and you got all the video, you got stuff. We had a deal at the end of the summer, and a couple catchers. We're doing the catcher top, and kids are throwing balls all over the place. And I finally had to stop them. I go, guys, this is on camera here. I said, so coaches are going to be able to see if you're accurate or not in your throws. I said, so I know we're all worried about this pop time. I go, but if you can't throw the ball down there and play catch, one, you don't get a pop time. I said, but two, coaches are seeing this. And the kid turned to me and goes, oh, this is on video? I go, yes, it's on video. We're going to see everything. Schools are going to see everything, right? Everybody's going to see it. And kind of get back to your point, too, with that. And I know a lot of times we get lumped into the recruiting part, right? Well, the recruiting is going to help them recruit. To your point, I tell kids every time when we have an event, we tell them, I go, use this to make yourself better. I said, which will in turn will make you more recruitable. You use, what was, I get my TrackMan data, right? Most people don't truly understand what the TrackMan data means anyway, and that's fine. Most people shouldn't understand what it is, but use it, use the video, use all that stuff to help you become the best player you can be. And if that's good enough to be recruited, somebody's going to then find you. You can use this stuff to send to them to get recruited. But, right, people just think they go, right, like when all this TrackMan, the data stuff started coming out, right, spin rate was the big one, right? Well, spin rate's still important, but spin rate's moving to the back burner. Like now we got the vertical brakes, the horizontal brakes, like all those things are starting to play more into it. And that's evolving all the time with this. And I think, the people that are, involved in this, and that's where, we can get leaned on is when these players come, we can help them out a little bit with it. I'm not Mr. TrackMan data diver guy here, but we understand a little bit more than the typical 16-year-old kid that shows up and is like, hey, what's my spin rate? Well,
we try to educate like that part of it, right? Like how to better understand all the data, from extension to like all that stuff matters, right? But one of the guys that kind of productized TrackMan was explaining to me like about like vertical attack angle, like and all that stuff, and he's like, if you weren't 6'3" and you're a pitcher, like back in the day, you're like, oh, you're 5'10", like that doesn't work because you're flat, right? But it's like if you're 5'10" and you have like and your slot is such and your vertical attack angle is like that makes a huge difference. So I'm like, why don't people adopt that more? It's because people are they cookie cutter it, right? Like, and you look at, I always go back to like, watch any big league game and watch all the dudes rolling out of a bullpen. Like, is that the picturesque, beautiful arm action and beautiful delivery? Heck no. Like, there's so much fun. Like, so like, and I know like, mechanics and all that stuff plays into health and all that stuff, but filth comes in many shapes and sizes when you're on the mound, right? And it doesn't like the key is like you get swing and misses. How are the hitters reacting to it? And that'll tell you everything about a pitcher that you need to know.
Yeah. You can have the prettiest, cleanest mechanics and you throw 95 and you get tattooed. You got the guy who's got terrible, ugly looking mechanics and throws a little less and gets everybody out. Like, then the goal is, right, if you get somebody out, if you're a hitter, am I getting a hit? Right. It kind of goes away. We got a kid in our state who's a senior who's kind of starting to get recruited a little bit. And Drew and Austin have seen him play quite a bit, but he's got some of the most awkward looking mechanics out there, but he has the best exit velo hands down at every event we ever have. But it scares people, right? Because it looks a little different. Well, how many people you got on your team that have 108 exit velocity? You know what I mean? Like there's something to it. So sometimes I think people they go, that looks a little different. I'm gonna stay away from it. Yeah. Well, that doesn't mean it's not gonna work.
And I think some of that is like, if you see it repeatedly, then you believe it. But the problem is no one has time to see it repeatedly, right? So that the ugly arm action, the ugly swing, that repeatedly smashes baseballs or repeatedly gets outs, like that might be the case. And if someone has the time to sit on it for enough, they're like, yeah, that dude's a dude. But if not, there's like, it's too risky. right? So
yeah, nobody wants to go all in on something that's a little different. They don't want to go. They go. I can go find me a better looking guy that's similar. That I don't have to coach up as much. It's a
right.
little bit more game ready when you're going in there. So
And that's why we're
it's
here,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
like because we are out there in the springtime, we are out there in the summertime, and we are out there during the fall, and it's not just at our events. That's our job, right? So
Right.
is to know the players at a more intimate level, and see their true abilities, and or lack thereof.
Right. And that's the part that we always joke, the kind of the spring kind of re-energize, where sometimes you get worn down, kind of re-energizes the batteries a little bit to go full force in the fall because you're watching the games, you're watching the kids, playing these high school games where they kind of have the community feel and they're getting after it, and then it jumps you full circle into the summer and rolls into it. But it's always a good time rolling in that. And we're, for us, we're winding down the fall events here, starting to plan out the winter and all that stuff, but kind of ready to rock and roll. We know you got to jump here, but we first of all, we want to thank you for coming on and joining, what we think is the #1 podcast here in the state. So we we want to thank you for coming on and kind of talking a little prep baseball while we're out here.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm glad I finally was able to make the cut to be on your show. And thank you very much for having me.
No problem at all. We'll let you get rolling, and we'll continue on here with our illustrious show we got going on here.
Illustrious. Take care, guys.
All right, thanks.
Good luck tonight with the Braves game, Austin.